Guys, we finally managed to get the big tank done. We got one fish in it. We're gonna go back in time. We're gonna go through the whole setup of it. It's taken me a lot longer than I wanted to, but without further ado, let's start the build. So for this project, we are going to be reusing a lot of the same materials from the original scape. So that includes most of the cork bark that make up the trees. We have a couple of new pieces, but most of them are just straight from the old scape. We're going to eventually attach them down here to the egg crate that you see at the bottom of the aquarium. That was just the best way I figured that we would hold these down in place because they will float. This is just a rough sketch layout of what we're trying to do here. A lot of the pieces are in the same exact spot because we managed to keep them connected, but then we have the introduction of some new pieces. So this big giant one here is gonna sit on this left side, block most of the view from over here, and we have a really nice opportunity to put a lot of Java fern in there because it has this little crease right here. So it'll look good once it's finished. It doesn't look great now, but we need to do some stuff with the top here because as you can see, it is massive. And we still have to figure out how to fit our light fixture there. So we're either gonna have to cut it and kind of do it in a way to where it looks organic and still be able to fit through the crack there, or we're gonna have to just chop it down to where it's not gonna interfere with this. We do need to make some extra holes in our wood so we can put more Java fern in. We don't want it to just be really inorganic looking and have it just straight up this crack. After a lot of tedious back and forth work with the light, trying to get this big piece to fit, I think we have essentially the layout here. So the next step is of course going to be siliconing the pieces that aren't siliconed down to the egg crate at the bottom, and then crossing our fingers that everything holds. The more I sit back and look at this with all the pieces in place, the more I think it might be pretty cool to actually do a cut here and cut out like a big cave. And then that way we have less of like a column of Java fern. It'll just kind of be this top part where we can stuff ferns, and then it'll just open this up. It'll be a cool little micro environment for the fish, and you know, big enough to where they're not going to swim in there and get stuck. So I think I'm going to do that. I still have to take the drill and do some holes in a few of these pieces, but other than that, we're pretty much done with this part. Fast forward to the next day, and it appears as if our silicone job was pretty good. So I've gone through and I've checked all of the different pieces that we had to reattach, and everything feels pretty solid. I'm confident that we can now move on to filling up the tank with substrate, and then of course getting water in it. I did have a little bit of an issue with some of the clear silicone. This piece in particular, the silicone did not set because I checked the expiration date and it was super past. So we actually did have an extra day in between all of this where I had to come out and remove this one and re-silicone it down with the white stuff. So again, this whole thing's gonna be covered, it doesn't matter. 100% silicone, as this stuff is pretty much all the same. It doesn't have any kind of weird chemicals in it that are gonna be harmful for the fish, so just know that. We also got a huge plant order in for a bunch of different tanks. I need to put these plants in here. We get to finally get this old tub of substrate off the floor. I'm super excited for that, but this is actually the substrate from that tank when it was originally set up that I was able to salvage. So I never like to throw away substrate, especially when you pay good money for it. This is like a mixture of, it has a bunch of this laterite in it. So what we're gonna try and do is spread this out evenly throughout the aquarium and use it as like the bottom layer of substrate. Even though we're gonna be putting in more fresh UN contra soil on top of it, it's not gonna have all these little bits of laterite that are just unsightly. It was something that was annoying about the first time we set up the aquarium that I didn't really like. So hopefully we have enough new stuff to cover that up, and then this won't be an annoying eyesore. now we just have to sit back and wait because this is going to take a while. Remember, it's about a 170-gallon tank, so at this rate, we're probably gonna be here for at least 20-30 minutes. So as the tank fills up here, I'm just taking some of the Java fern from over in these tanks because we need to make room for these. Got to clean those up a little bit, but I also have the level up here because I'm just monitoring how this is doing as we're filling it up and putting more weight on this stand because our stand did get a little banged up in the move, and I want to make sure that nothing too crazy is gonna happen. I think I'm probably gonna call it for tonight here pretty soon. I don't think I'm gonna fill the tank all the way up because we have a lot of plants to plant in the substrate. So we'll be digging through here to find all the dwarf sage that we have and really fill out a nice carpet in here. The substrate, I was able to get most of that laterite covered, but some have just inevitably poked up out of there. It'll be okay in the long run. Step into the future with me next day, and the tank is still level. Not surprised there. We only filled it up about this far, and I'm curious about the temperature though. Instead of using a normal thermometer, we have to use something fancy. So I got one of these Awaza digital readout things. It sticks to the glass. We had this on before. I never really talked about these things, but of all the digital thermometers that exist, I think this is the best looking one. There's a few different others that I've played around with on Amazon, but let's give this a shot. Also, I didn't even think about this when we came in. Good to see that nothing floated up to the top. That was obviously a concern because you never know how well things are gonna go. We still have to fill the tank up. We're looking like we're still a little cold. I mean, it has only been probably 12 hours since we filled the tank up with that super cold water, so not too worried about that. We keep it about 76 in here most of the time, and that's able to keep the tanks that don't have heaters plugged in at about 74, so 2 degrees colder than the room overall. But with this tank, I think we're probably gonna have to use some auxiliary heating devices either in the filter or separately in the tank, depending on what filter we end up using. We'll talk more about equipment as we get to it. I need to do a lot more planting. We need to get started on it. But as you can see, we already have a few things in the tank. So I got some of the jungle val in place. One thing that I kind of messed up on, at least I think I messed up on it, is the not so dwarf sage that we have. I could cut this back. Everything grows a little bit differently on the farm under the super high light, but this, I don't think this is exactly what I wanted. I was looking for something small, and it comes small usually. So not sure if this is a mix up on their end or if it was my end, but we're gonna go ahead and chop this down and plant it throughout. If it ends up being just a super tall species of dwarf sage, that's not what we want. We'll just have to deal with that at a later time. It's not a huge deal. It won't be a big problem to have to pull some things out of this tank. But enough's enough. Let's start to get some Java fern in here. Let's fill the tank up a little bit more, and let's actually plant this thing. That plan fell through quickly. Decided that I was gonna hedge my bets instead. So we pulled out the jungle val, we put the dwarf sage, air quotes, in the back, just in case it does stay tall. I think that looks nicer anyway. I like the thinner leaves of it. And then I cut up about half of it, put it in the front. If it decides it wants to stay low, that's fine. Then I'll get the desired effect I want, and we'll do something different in the back with these tall ones. Let's finally get to the fun part though, and let's add our Java fern and fill the tank up a little bit more. I am not sure where we're at in this video, guys, but we're gonna try and pick it up from a few weeks after the setup of the build. Maybe you saw me just finish aquascaping. That's kind of where I think we're at, but it is, of course, been a few weeks since we did that. So the CO2 is still not set up. I was kind of going back and forth on whether or not we were even gonna add CO2 to this tank because, you know, we don't really need it. But because we have this active substrate, and my goal is to eventually have this completely covered in dwarf sage, CO2 might help to kind of balance things out. So we're probably gonna do it. If you take a look around the tank, a lot of that stuff that we chopped down is still getting itself seeded. We don't have a lot of new growth. Maybe there's a couple on a few of the pieces. It looks like, you know, we definitely have some melt off, like this guy right here just completely died. The stuff in the back though, it's hard to see. I don't have my zoom lens on, is getting some new growth though. So having some material there and not just completely chopped off pieces has helped to just get the plants established. So hoping that those do grow up big and tall, I guess, but we have these in the front, so I don't know. The Java fern though is still doing pretty good. We don't have a ton of die off or anything. Everything is looking pretty good overall, except for the substrate. So we definitely want to get the CO2 set up today, and then I also want to do a little bit more aquascaping because, you know, with the dwarf sage not being really where it's going to be for a very long time, it's going to be kind of bare like this. I want to add a little bit of dragonstone, kind of how we had it before, where there's some stone rubble in front of the trees. I think that's going to go a long way for kind of just filling things out and making it look that much more cohesive. For this tank, we're going to be using the Aquarium CoOp CO2 regulator because it's going to be a perfect fit here. I've been using a few of these on some of my tanks, and I mean, it's a fraction of the cost compared to the thing that it looks just like, and it's got the best warranty on the face of the earth. So if you have any issues with it, you're going to be able to get it replaced really easily. That's something that most companies don't like to do, but Corey does very, very well. And if you've used CO2 stuff in the past, you know that regulators have problems, guys. It's something that happens. So having that warranty is super important to me. Another benefit to this one is that you can hook up to 6 tanks on one regulator if you get additional manifolds. So that's pretty sweet. So I just went through and set this thing up. It's pretty easy. I'm not going to make a full tutorial, but if you slow this down and watch it a couple times, you'll get pretty much the gist of how to set up a system. We'll probably adjust this a little bit later. Might need to be bumping a little bit more than that because this is such a big tank, but that bubble counter is eventually going to pump CO2 all the way back to this part, which I'm gonna sneak you guys back in here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a glass diffuser, an inline diffuser there that's plugged into the canister filter outflow. So hopefully we don't have to wait too long before we get CO2 into that thing. This line was filled with water for a long time, so it's probably gonna take a while, but nonetheless, we will eventually start to probably see some tiny little micro bubbles pop out that outflow eventually. With bigger tanks like this especially, using that inline diffuser is probably the best way to mix CO2 in with the water and get the most out of it. If we were just bubbling it up, then yeah, we would get some diffusion and we would get a lower pH and we would get CO2 in the water, but it's just not gonna be as good. So I use these normal CO2 diffusers on even tanks inside like up to 60, 70 gallons. But once you get over 75 gallons, I think you probably wanna switch over and do something with the canister filter, but it really just depends on what you're aiming to do. There you have it. We finally got the rocks in place. I will admit it has been like a month since I picked this video up. I've been working on this thing for a long time, guys. You can see a lot of the Java fern is shooting out new growths, trying to propagate itself. Not the best look in the world. I will say that I don't love it when this plant does this. We can go in and pull them off and try and start new plants though if we really wanted to. We got the pothos growing up. I need to figure out a lighting situation maybe for up there. Hopefully we can get the sweet potato situation figured out that I've been working on behind the scenes because I think it would be really cool to have a bunch of vinage growing up. But hey, look, this video has been long enough and we don't quite have all the fish that we're gonna be stocking in this tank. So I wanna improvise a little bit. We're gonna pull out the one big rainbow fish we have in the 2 plant holding tanks and we're gonna let him just have free roam on this tank. Hopefully we can get him some company though pretty soon. So it is currently frozen outside, hence why I have not topped up the tank and made it look all pretty for you guys, but we have our one rainbow fish in his gigantic 167-ish gallon aquarium now. This was a big thing to get off of my to-do list, guys, getting this aquarium finally pretty much finished, minus of course the final livestock to go in this aquarium, but I'm happy to get some of the detail work done in the front of the tank. I think that makes it look a little bit more cohesive, if you will. We really just need this dwarf sage or giant sage or whatever this stuff is to really fill in. I think that's gonna go a super long way as far as the overall look. I wanna get a little bit more Java fern on some of the lower parts of the wood. That's, I think, pretty much the last thing I want to do with this scape, and then just let time do its thing. Super fortunate though, because this aquarium does live, you know, not in my house, so I don't have to really see it every day, and so that means it is a tank that's not gonna get 100% of my attention, probably. Haven't really had any of the normal beginner stage algae issues with this aquarium at all, so I'm super fortunate for that. We're not getting the same headache that we're getting in the bonsai tree aquarium that is a tank that I see every day out here. I think our rainbow fish is thankful for that too. He gets to actually look at a nice aquarium as he takes a nice poop. But yeah, a handful of things that I think we kind of skipped over on this build that I want to just share with you really quick. Filtration, we're still using the same Awaza canister filter that we had on it. This is the big one. I think it's the 800. Easy to change that pre-filter out if we need to get our flow going, because that is a thing that, you know, these filters don't have a ton of. It's flow on a big tank like this. You know, we do need to circulate the water better than that. So we have the Current USA pump on here on the back. Really gonna push the water across the back of the aquarium and hopefully make, you know, a little circle of flow. The lighting too is the same as it was on the last scape. So these are the 6-foot Current Serene LEDs. And you know, when it comes to lighting a tank like this, I of course thought like, hey, we could get some stuff, we could hang it up here, and that would work really good. They would have to be 4-foot light fixtures, and I think we could achieve enough light from that. But I mean, I have these two 6-foot lights, they work. So I think we're gonna stick with this for the time being. I think that is kind of the grand total with this tank, with this recreation of the last scape. It looks pretty close to, you know, what it was looking like before, which is what I wanted to do. I know it's not the most entertaining thing in the world. You guys, I'm sure a lot of you wanted to see a brand new scape in this thing, but I just really like this style. I didn't want, like when we moved, I didn't want to take that scape down because I still enjoyed looking at it and messing around in my head with like, okay, what fish could we put in this eventually? I still wanted to be able to do that when we moved. And so that's why we, you know, set up the tank as best to what it was before at the old house. And I'm hoping now to kind of finish the dream, if you will, for what I wanted to do. So as far as that final fish pairing, I think we're gonna throw a bunch of rummy nose tetras back into this aquarium because I just really like rummy nose and I think they're gonna look awesome in it. But I wanna pair it with some more red fish. So I'm not gonna give away the surprise on that yet, but I have a pretty good picture in my head. We'll see if it actually turns out good. And if you're still watching at this point, you're a real one, so you know I gotta talk about Legit. We got a new kind of pricing structure on some of the bigger bags and maybe even the 2 ounces. Maybe we're testing that out just to see what we can do to get this really good fish food into the hands of as many people as possible. So check out the website, support Legit Fish Food, and my mission of getting healthier food into more people's tanks. Thank you guys so much. It really does mean a lot. You know, we're pushing forward, we're trying to get to that next level, and your support so far has been phenomenal. So thank you once again, guys. My one rainbow fish in here is saying thank you to you for watching as well. We'll see you guys in the next one.